Hey everyone, it's Amanda, also known as Ravenclaw Book Nerd. Yep, that's right. Back from the dead once again. Happy 2021, and welcome to another 20 minutes of me fangirling over the absolute masterpiece that is the Stormlight Archive. So this is the spoiler review of Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. I have to admit I was a little bit worried to return to the Stormlight Archive because I last read a Stormlight Archive book in 2017, and I considered it my favorite series, like, that entire time, but since reading Oathbringer, between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, I read 120 books and wrote one. So, part of me was a little bit scared that now that I know so much more about writing, I wouldn't enjoy the Stormlight Archive as much as I did when I was 14. And I was so wrong, and I am so happy about it. Understandably, I had high expectations, and Brandon just, blew them through the roof once again. World building, character development, as always, plot, crossovers, just everything. All in one amazing book. Before I kick out anyone who hasn't read it, I'm going to just give a quick rundown of the Stormlight Archive series. The Stormlight Archive takes place on the fictional planet Roshar, where humans and humanoid creatures called singers are locked in an endless war. Some humans can also bond with creatures called Spren, which gives them powers that stem from stormlight. The series follows Kaladin, a soldier turned slave who wants to protect everyone. Dalinar, the brother of the late king with a past that he's forgotten. And Shallan, an artist and thief with lots of secrets. The series also takes place in a larger extended universe of Brandon Sanderson's books called the Cosmere, which also includes Mistborn, Warbreaker, Elantris, and a couple of other Sanderson books and series that I can't remember. I would suggest, before you read Oathbringer, which is the third book in the Stormlight Archive series, make sure that you read at least the Mistborn trilogy and Warbreaker, because there are some crossovers that you'll understand a lot better. Just a heads up, this is a really long series. We are currently book 4 out of 10, theoretically, and each of them, you can see, each of them is between 1,000 and 1,200 pages, so you need the reading stamina to be able to get through these, but they are so worth it. I'm not summarizing this thing, y'all read it. As some of you might know from watching my Oathbringer video, I did not hear most of these names pronounced until this year. I will try my best to pronounce the characters' names correctly, because I know it was awful last video. Roshar, Adolin, Jasna, Seth. Let me just say again, I freaking love all of these characters. Kaladin, you already know, Kaladin has always been my favorite, but I love Shallan, and after this book, I also love Adolin and Navani. Just, characters are amazing. I was gonna say perfect. The amazing thing about Brandon's characters is that they're never perfect. This has started to be a recurring theme in my review videos, but the whole right and wrong and where they intersect, whether you should be blamed for your ancestors' mistakes, it's a huge question in the real world and in a lot of different, especially fantasy series. All of Brandon's books tend to touch on that a little bit, just because even if you're on what you label the enemy side, which they use the term the enemy a lot, but then you have sort of good enemies and bad enemies, good allies and bad allies. Everyone is nuanced and everyone has multiple motivations and multiple morals that sometimes conflict. It's so interesting. There's going to be a really long section about the mental health of the characters because these people need so much therapy. Kaladin is the most obvious person who needs therapy. It's really interesting to see his responses to his enemies dying, even when it's someone he doesn't really like Roshar. He really cares not necessarily about the people, but the fact that he is obligated to protect them. That's why it was so devastating for him to lose Moash. Obviously, Moash didn't die, and I feel like Kaladin seeing what happened to Moash is worse. Moash basically turning to the dark side, which I hesitate to use these terms because it's not cut and dry that like the humans are the good side and the singers are the bad side, but Moash has done some really terrible things, and that is undeniable, and I am talking specifically to the people who have searched Moash did nothing wrong on Google, because apparently people search that, and it makes no sense to me. Because you can argue that he's not evil. You cannot argue that he did nothing wrong. Moash was Kaladin's friend, and he uses that against him so often, and it hurts my soul. Every time Moash kills someone that Kaladin is supposed to protect, especially if it's his friend, it's rubbing salt in the wound. It's losing someone else, and also a reminder that he already lost Moash. I think it's fair to say that the fourth ideal is literally the hardest thing for Kaladin to accept, ever. I accept that there will be those I cannot protect. He has told himself that he needs to protect everyone, and if he can't, then he's a failure. I think the fourth ideal is huge for his character development, and it's not going to be perfect, and it's not that he won't feel the losses in the future when he can't protect people, but he accepts that. It's the first step. We're getting into symbolism because I can recognize it way better than I could 3 years ago. Kaladin's brand heals after he reaches the fourth ideal, and I find that really symbolic because he got the brand from organizing rebellions and essentially trying to protect people. Again, I think it reminds him of the times that he's failed to protect people. Because if the rebellions had succeeded, he wouldn't have gotten the brand. So he is healed from that, physically. And obviously he's not healed from it mentally, but he's starting to realize that not every loss is his fault. And it's not his responsibility to protect everyone. I should just make an entire video about Kaladin's mental health. I also just want to mention the fact that one of the ways Kaladin finds he can contribute to Urithiru, is that how you say it? Is reforming the treatment of people with battle shock, which is essentially PTSD, which Kaladin also has. A lot of people who don't have any experience with PTSD really don't understand it. They decide that the best way to treat depression and PTSD is lock people in dark rooms, which is not it. It's a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people to realize that celebrities... Is it okay to call Kaladin a celebrity? I feel like he's essentially a celebrity. That celebrities are human and have mental health problems. Kaladin can present as well as he wants, but he has PTSD and he has depression and it affects him constantly, and he is sort of using that to educate people about the fact that it's something that exists and not something that you need to be locked up for. It's something to be treated, and victims of it should still be treated like people, essentially. Maybe that reform will lead him to a therapist. Let's hope. You probably noticed that I'm still calling him Moash and not Vyre. It's because I think we normally see him from Kaladin's perspective, and if you notice, whenever you're in Vyre's perspective, you see all of his dialogue tags address him as Vyre. I especially remember the scene when he's talking to Odium about how he can manipulate Kaladin. Whenever they talk about Kaladin, Vyre's dialogue tags turn back into Moash. He loves to insist that he cannot feel remorse. And my interpretation is that Vyre can't. And Moash can. And whenever he, especially for Kaladin, whenever he's feeling remorse, he reverts back to Moash. I think that's so genius. He goes blind at the end. He is completely lost sight of his morals, because essentially everything he does now is to protect himself. His way of protecting himself is making it so that he can't feel remorse, which is one of the most dangerous things that you can possibly do. And I think once you lose sight of everything except you, I think it's really symbolic that he loses sight of everything else. Shallan. Oh, this poor girl. I think I talked about her level of mental breakdown / existential crisis in the previous video, the Oathbringer video, and the mental state keeps getting worse. The beginning of the book already kind of had a red flag for me. It was a sort of weird, not exactly symbiotic relationship between Shallan and Vale and Radiant all living in the same body and, like, hijacking it from each other. And I thought that was going to be really unhealthy, and I was right. I think Brandon Sanderson has confirmed that it's sort of a magical version of dissociative identity disorder. In this book, we have the introduction of Formless, which is something that both Vale and Radiant really want to avoid, and it turns out to kind of be Shallan in extra repression mode. Shallan is so far in denial / repression that she can't remember her own past. And this reminded me of Dalinar a little bit. One of the traumatic things that she repressed from her childhood was killing her first spren, which almost comes back to bite Adolin. We'll talk more about that later, because I'm very excited about that scene. She kind of developed Vale, the character, as a disguise to pretend to be someone else, which I think is also very symbolic. I'm going to say this a lot, because Vale ends up sort of being her way of denying her past. As Vale, she can kind of pretend to be someone else who hasn't experienced the trauma that she's experienced. After the whole Formless fiasco, Vale sort of disappears. I'm kind of sad because I liked her, but this was a really unhealthy situation with her, like, grappling with Radiant and Vale. I don't really know where Shallan and Radiant stand at this point, but I think she's in a lot better of a place, or at least she's not quite as far into the repression. We don't exactly know if Formless is still around, which they probably are. But I think Shallan is healthier this way. And also she gets to sort of make amends with Testament, who is the cryptic Deadeye's spren that she killed as a child. So I'm really interested to see how that develops. Speaking of Deadeye's spren, I had a lot of this in my Oathbringer video too, but I freaking love Adolin and Maya and their relationship. Obviously, where we left off with them before Rhythm of War was like, oh my gosh, he talked to the sword and she talked back. And it was really exciting at that point. He summons her in battle and she comes in 7 seconds. For a shard blade, that is a big thing. And, oh, there's so much to unpack about this. Honor Spren are, first of all, accusing Adolin of mistreating Spren is hilarious, but accusing humans of mistreating the Spren during the Recreants, or before the Recreants, I guess, the Honor Spren basically assume that Deadeye Spren are not dead, but inhuman. You can't call them human either. Dang it. They can't think and can't understand things. Obviously, Adolin has proved that wrong. Adolin decides that he is going to stand trial on behalf of humanity. Adolin Cullen is the best representative of humanity you could have possibly picked. Change my mind. Representing humanity's honor, this man. This book just solidified my appreciation for Adolin, basically. When the Honor Spren try to use Maya and put her on a witness stand to testify against Adolin, I guess, even though they thought she couldn't talk, and she started freaking out and having a sort of Spren panic attack, and he was trying to tell them that they're hurting her, and the Honor Spren go, no, she's screaming at you because you abuse her, which is ridiculous! Then she raises her voice, literally, and she tells them that they chose this. It just, her willingness to speak for him is just a testament to the strength of her bond with Adolin. And I know you can't exactly have an actual radiant bond with a Deadeye Spren as far as I know, but that's about as close as you can get, honestly. I don't like it when every single person in a book has magic powers, and I'm glad that Brandon is making sure that Adolin doesn't become a Radiant, because I know that's what Dalinar expects, and I don't want it to happen. This is about as close as he's gonna come, and I love it.